This shop's one of a kind. We never know what might turn up. Some days, it could be a grand old classic. Other days, maybe a muscle car, even a military vehicle. Some jobs are quick fixes. Others are full-blown restorations. And on occasion, million-dollar recreations. My only rule, perfection. And that's the kind of thing that we do at the Guild Garage. You know, a little while ago, I put my hand up at an auction to buy an Aston Martin. Mainly because it was, well, it was a V12 Vanquish, and Larry has an Aston Martin. His is an 8-cylinder. So that was really the driving force behind my purchase, because he knew I wanted an Aston Martin, so he bought one. So I bought a better one.
We're at our storage unit. David sent me over today to get his Aston Martin Vanquish that he bought at the auction last year. It's been for sale, but it's been in storage, so come over to get it, load it in the trailer, and take it back over. He never really said why he needs it at the shop. It could be somebody's interest in looking at it. I don't know if he wants to drive it, sell it, what's going on with it.
Problem is, well, I bought it at an auction, and it's a modern car, so it's really hard to determine that there's anything wrong. Apparently, there's something wrong. We've been checking it through, and it just doesn't run quite right, and it's got funny lights coming on and off and that kind of thing.
Well, the Aston Martin, we're trying to figure out why it's not running properly. Yeah, the engine doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound crisp. It doesn't sound like when you rev it up, it doesn't flash up. It like labors to get up to up an RPM. It just doesn't seem like it's running correctly.
Okay, look at that. We got this one here. This one here is pumping, it's firing, it's hot.
Yep, nice.
This side here is stone cold.
This car has 12 cylinders. It has a bank of 6 on each side, so it's a V12. And what Ron's doing is checking the exhaust to make sure that both cylinders are running. You should have warm exhaust coming out both tailpipes.
There's no ignition, there's no combustion happening in that side of the engine. Well, the next step is to try to get into the diagnostics a little deeper and find out what's going on, to see why we have no fire or anything on that one side, one bank of the engine. You plug the scanner into a test port on the car, and it'll read the computer and read any trouble codes that are in the computer. And you look up the trouble code and go from there for your diagnostics.
This week, I've left the guys behind at the shop working on my Aston Martin Vanquish while I'm at Pebble Beach. Not surprisingly, Aston Martin has a pavilion here. They got all of their brand new models. It is really neat because they also brought a lot of the people responsible for creating these cars. With my Aston Martin Vanquish languishing on a hoist back at the shop, there was no way I was going to miss a meeting with these guys.
The British car industry is very heavily motorsport motivated, and a lot of people that come out of Formula One do come into car manufacturing, and they take those same disciplines in terms of actually delivering what needs to be delivered in a very short space of time. And that was absolutely what happened with Aston Martin, was the racing success really spurred the company on.
I'm speaking to Paul Spires, who's the commercial director of Aston Martin. He is absolutely enthusiastic about these cars. It's not about a brand, it's not about a commodity. He's passionate about the cars.
We've had vehicle building for over 100 years. We restore cars, we restore about 10 cars per year, and we basically take the car back to its constituent parts. So we take it right back to a bare steel chassis, and then we rebuild the car from there. The cars are totally handmade. We have the same team that are doing the restoration of the bodywork and building chassis, doing the DB4 GTs. And it's very, very important to us that the car is totally authentic.
You know, one of the things over the years that I have been, quite successful with is English wheeling. And we use a lot of different applications of, metal forming and coach building. English wheel's still one of my favorites. And I understand that you're still using English wheel at Aston Martin.
Absolutely. We've actually got 4 apprentices in our panel shop at the moment that we're training on the English wheel. It's a 4-year apprenticeship, but they only get to touch the English wheel in year 3. because they have to understand how the metal moves and evolves and works before we actually allow them to do work on an English wheel. And it's absolutely key to us that we develop this skill set to engage with the next generation, because we've got fantastic facilities, we've got fantastic tools. They're fine, but if you haven't got somebody that can actually operate them, they're redundant.
And it's a craft. I mean, it's an art form, actually.
It's an art, yeah. I totally
So,
agree.
I mean, this creature was built by chaps
Yes.
who were using English wheels and everything. Of course, a modern car, when you get into production, this is a high-tech piece.
Yes, and it uses a lot of press panels. Because of the time that we have to build the cars in. You know, when we do a restoration on things like a DB4 GT, we spend 4,500 man-hours to restore a car like this. Whereas we build this car in 200 man-hours, which seems like not very long, but when you think a modern production car is
That's okay,
very
but that's
short.
that individual. But how many tens of thousands of hours went into getting ready to build that one car?
Yes, exactly. The DB4 GT behind me is an absolute style icon. And there's no doubt that Aston Martin designers through the years have taken influence and drawn on this car. And there are cues within the styling and design that you will see running through all our models. The side straight, what we call the smiley grille. You know, that's instantly recognizable. And I always think that with any Aston Martin, you should be able to take the badge away from the front of the car and still recognize it as an Aston Martin. And then, of course, who could forget that actually James Bond decided that he would drive a DB5. You know, this relatively unknown producer came along and said, we want to do a British spy film. And Aston Martin said, well, yeah, I guess so, why not? Never realizing at that point in time what a global phenomenon that 007, James Bond, and the DB5, of course, will become. And we now have a lot of customers that come to us who saw the James Bond films, who buy a DB11 or buy a Vanquish on the back of that car. It is probably the single most significant moment in Aston Martin's history.
So I plugged my code reader into the computer and found out that there was 6 codes in the system. Okay, so there we go. 919. And now I'm just looking them up on the computer to find out where they're pointing to. We have coolant code, we have an O2 sensor code, so, and then a fuel pump monitor code as well. So, you know, one doesn't relate to the other. There's no misfire codes.
That's interesting that there's no misfiring codes.
It's kind of all over the place. And you know, if there was 2 or 3 together that absolutely went together, then we'd say, hey, you know, we can look in this situation. But I think you're on the ball where you were talking about the computer itself spitting out all these random codes.
Yeah.
And I think if we try to switch them over, we'll be able to
see what happens.
See if we can clear them.
Yeah.
We can go set the other computer in and see if we bring what we bring back up. Okay.
I'm used to being able to fix things with a screwdriver and a couple of wrenches and everything, and apparently this is not the same deal at all. It is just an absolute thoroughbred.
Can you lock them in on your end now?
I can. I'm just going to put the brackets back on them. We'll get it fired up and see what happens.
I came across the new Aston Martin Vanquish S in the Aston Martin Pavilion in California. This car has some amazing features that aren't even found on the standard Vanquish. You know, it's got splitters on the front for high speed to keep the front end stable on high speed turns. It's got amazing side curtains on it to keep the pressures underneath low. It is just an absolute thoroughbred.
Vanquish S, as you know, it's all carbon fiber body, 600 horsepower, naturally aspirated. We call it our ultimate GT.
You know, right now I'm talking to Merrick Reichman, and he's the Chief Creative Officer for Aston Martin. And in short, really basically what that means is he is the lead designer and the guy responsible for these incredible cars.
The starting point is always a sketch. First of all, it's a conversation, but then it's a sketch. The conversation is, what's the brief? Talk to what we would call a CTO, Chief Technical Officer. How fast is it going to go? How many people? What's the horsepower? What's the weight of the car going to be? How do we develop all of that? How will you define power? And that's what I could sketch, I could draw, and that's the feeling. So it always starts with that, then we develop a model, the model becomes full size, the model becomes reality, and hey presto, we have a car. A lot of new and unique features on the car. Carbon fiber obviously is there for structure and weight. So we bond our aluminium chassis and then apply carbon panels to those chassis. so that you get a very, very stiff structure, which is really, really important for a GT sports car. Think of an athlete. You know, if I wear Lycra, you can see what I look like. That's what you see in a Vanquish. You see the latent power that the product and the car has, the haunches at the back, because they're rear-wheel drive. So that power unit, the shoulders of the car, are emphasized by the bodywork.
See, one of my favorite parts of cars in the last 10 years or so is this sort of aggressive rear end that they're getting.
It's about emphasizing power.
Yeah.
So this is all visually emphasizing the power. And the great benefit here is we're able to do this with carbon fiber. So if you look at this panel here, this is one single panel all the way through to here.
So you've got a very stiff.
The mono side of the car, absolutely. And what it means, because it's carbon, we have stiffness, but we also have the visual language that we need to show the power, the muscularity we talked about earlier. These are rear-wheel drive cars. So this is all about emphasizing that power. And an Aston Martin is what I would call always consequent with its design language. So each line has a meaning to the next. And the thing that you typically don't see or realize in an Aston Martin is that there's something we call S-curvature, or consequent lines and highlights. Highlights are really important, and you see them here. You see those lines there, repeated lines? They're highlight lines that are defining shape and form. And that gives you that feeling of muscularity.
So we scan tested the computer in the Aston Martin Vanquish, and the codes that it popped out to us just didn't make sense. There are random codes. Possibly we have an issue with one of the computers not firing that side of the engine. So if we switch them around and the engine actually starts now running on that on different sides, we know that that's an issue with the computer. We're eliminating the possibility of something else.
So I'll just clear the codes.
Yeah, I'll start to get this apart here. Yeah, often with diagnostics like that, you can switch a part around. So if you have an engine that's not running on one cylinder, you can switch the spark plug from a good cylinder, good running cylinder, to the dead one. Switch them over and see if the problem follows that spark plug. So we decided on this car to switch the computers over to see if we can have the issue follow the computer. Just undoing the connectors for the computers. There's 3 connectors on each computer we got to undo.
He's removing the brackets from the outside and the plugs, and I'm removing the insides.
So this is moved and right out. Let me just undo this a couple turns here, and you can take it.
Okay, I have one.
Are they marked in any way now? We're going to see, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, it's free.
It's free. And I have 2.
All right, let's bring them out and have a look at those things.
This is the way they came out. Same numbers on them exactly. WUA5.
If we switch the computers and it's the left bank that's running now and the right bank that's dead, well, we know that what the issues with the computer. Can you lock them in on your end now?
I can. I'm just going to put the brackets back on them.
Okay, all right, everything's tightened up on my end here.
Okay, perfect. We'll get it fired up and see what happens.
Started. Look at that. Hot exhaust?
Cold exhaust.
Yep, not firing, just pumping air.
By switching the computers, we've proved that the one computer is bad. It's running the other side perfectly now.
And so all we have to do now is get another computer, either a rebuilt one or a new one, or whatever Dave wants to do, and install them in the car, and that car should be ready to go.
What they're telling me is that it's a computer problem. And I said, well, what's the big deal? Get another one. Well, we could. They're $7,000 US a piece, and they only sell them in pairs. So, okay, this whole thing with Larry may have backfired a bit. This is where you really start to define whether it's going to work or not.
Exactly.
We visited Aston Martin House, and I met a young chap by the name of Antonino, and he was doing some amazing sketches, and we struck up a conversation of saying, well, I have done the same kind of thing, but on custom cars, and he ran me through what they do there.
This is a sketch of the Aston Martin Valkyrie. We take imagination from every kind of domains. It can be architecture, it can be art, sculptures, can be fashion, can be aircraft. It really depends the car we have to design. Every time we start with the same process, we start with the same start, which is
Art.
the sketches.
Yeah, art is
All
what you start
comes
with, yeah.
from your head to the paper.
When you have run through this process, what's your next step?
The next step from that, so thanks to all the sketches, all the different views, we are able to create a model, a 3D model. So we use clay models. So as you can see
so like
behind
over
me-
here.
Yeah. So basically, the modelers, with all the different sketches, they're able to interpret and create the 3D form.
This is where you really start to define where it really can see whether it's going to work or not.
Exactly. So that's why we use clay, because you can add and remove material as much as you want until you find the right proportion, the right shape.
I have done some modeling in the past, but never the entire thing. Don't need to because I don't need to work it out for a committee. But models have been handy, and it was interesting to see them working on a small model that represents, the progress to a larger full-scale model.
It's also really interesting because you can walk around the car and see the car in different angles. And if
I
you
notice
put
you've
it
got
outside,
fine line, and I mean we use fine line in my shop for
Yes.
many different things, but you've got it sitting around a clay model. So
I can
you've
show
got to
you
tell
how
me
it
what
works.
that's about.
So we use that basically as a pencil line. So if you have to tell to the modeler, move this line across or move this volume lower, we use that tape and then, so we apply it like this. So for example, I can tell him, you see inside you, this volume is too high, I can tell him move this volume down to this line.
With a thinner one, you can actually make very subtle body lines. You can pull
Exactly,
the curves and
'cause
everything, and just with that first before you start carving it.
Exactly.
Fine line tape it comes in various thicknesses, and the advantage to it is you can bend it. So when you're laying out body lines or something like that, you want to make some adjustments, you can run the fine line along the body line and then move it up and down. You can also use it for masking, for pinstriping, or for custom paint. You can bend it around really sharp corners.
It's totally flexible, so you can tune the line or you want.
Yeah.
You can do the shape and change the attitude. You can go straight. Good to indicate to the modeler which line he needs to use. So, for example, if you want to shift this line to that one, like this, he
can pull
knows
that
where he has
down
to
and
go.
then, so he's moving the whole body line down. And then if you go, no, I really don't like it now, throw some more clay
And
back on there and build it back up.
If it's not the
again.
right one, you take it off and you put another one on top
So
of
how
it.
long would you spend with one of these models?
Usually we spend 3 weeks, 4 weeks on that, depends the project. But it has to be quite quick because you have to give the feeling of the car really quickly. And after that, when we're totally happy with the shape and the volume, we scan it and then the process carries on. And this will be a reference after for all the models we'll do from that. This is the design intention and we have to try to keep it until the end.
That's brilliant. Anytime I run into a designer from one of the major car companies, I mean, it's a little bit inspiring. I mean, I sort of get home thinking, wow, geez, I'd like to build this, or I would like to do a little custom work. Wow, what a car. Like 12 cylinders really pushes this thing down the road, eh?
Sounds nice.
We had a problem with the engine only running on 6 cylinders. It's a 12-cylinder car. It was only running on a bank of 6. All right, so our new computers are in for the Aston Martin. And they're all nicely packed away here. So today we got the computers in from Aston Martin. They sent them to us. We're going to install them in there and see if we can get this thing running on all 12 cylinders.
Anyway, okay, hope this works.
Does that feel like a lot of money?
Yeah, it feels like a lot of money.
All right. Kind of exciting because, I mean, these are a real expensive item, and Aston Martin's such a great car. Just running on 6 cylinders, it feels good. I can hardly wait to feel what it's going to be with 12.
Computer's in. I'm surprised how easy a job this is to get these in and out.
Okay, I can get the brackets off. All right, now I need Ron.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, I'll put the brackets on here and we'll try it. Computers are in, climb in the seat. It's time to fire this up and see what's gonna happen.
Neutral and... Whoa! Wow, hey, that sounds a lot better.
Purring like a kitten. Whew, the sound of that 12-cylinder rolling, beautiful. Sounds beautiful.
Wow, you could hear both, all 12 hitting, and sounded amazing.
Ron's gonna check the exhaust, make sure that both sides are warm coming out.
getting heat out of both sides?
Oh, yeah, we got heat out of both sides now.
Beautiful.
Perfect. Yeah, I could tell by the sound of the engine that it was running correctly now, but I just went back anyway just to put my hands on it to feel the heat coming out of the exhaust.
I just love the Aston Martin Vanquish. I mean, it's one of the most dramatic designs that they came up with from the 90s to present day. It's an awesome car. So far, of all the parts that I've had to get for this Aston Martin, this is my favorite. I don't think we've ever had to order an umbrella before, you know, to fill out the parts that we need for a job, but I mean, when I found out there's an umbrella mounted in these, well, pretty much had to have it. And you know, Larry's Aston Martin doesn't come equipped with its own umbrella. That gives me a leg up. And just making sure you don't hurt anything.
Thanks, Ranger.
Yeah. I am so looking forward to driving this car with all 12 cylinders. Can't wait. Go for a nice spin. Wow, what a car. Like 12 cylinders really pushes this thing down the road, eh?
That's nice.
Yeah. Shift's nice too. I mean, it's a spectacular car. This car's running really nicely now with new computers in it. Go's good too. You know, I couldn't be more pleased with this Aston Martin Vanquish. It's not only an absolutely exquisite thing to look at, it's a superb car to drive. And it's way better than Larry's.